Hello everyone. Today I am going to be reviewing the fifth studio album by Sri Lankan UK rapper M.I.A. This album is titled AIM and it was released 2 years ago this week actually, September 9, 2016. M.I.A. prefaced the release of this record by saying that it would be her last. Now, this isn't the first time she has said that about an album. However, it's been 2 years, and I definitely am getting the sense that she wanted to at least take a very long break away from music after this album's release. She is actually gearing up to release in the US, the UK, and Canada her documentary Matangi Maya M.I.A., which will be released as a much delayed documentary describing and chronicling her journey and all of the things that she has experienced as a refugee and dealing with her father. So I'm very excited to see this documentary this fall. So that's kind of the next big thing we have to gear up for. But I have reviewed, of course, all of her other previous albums on this channel, and now it's time for me to review her fifth and supposedly final. Again, like I said, I don't necessarily believe that this is actually her final record. However, I am not expecting any new M.I.A. music anytime soon. There's a lot going on politically, and this album was released 2 years ago where the refugee crisis was really ramping up. And she released one of the first singles for this album, Borders, which is the first track on this record, in the fall of 2015, known as the year of the refugee crisis. And so this song and the album theme tends to gear in that direction. Of course, she has also stated that this album is not that political, and it's also one of her more softer, kind of liberated albums. And you can definitely sense that. There's a level of contentment in the lyrics that isn't that as feisty or isn't as punk as in her earlier work. And it's not as biting either. I mean, she's definitely still pulling some punches, but it's also a lot, like I said, softer in language. I don't know necessarily how I feel about M.I.A. being quite so, I don't want to say dumbed down, but just being very kind of, like, I want her to be happy. But there's so much that she can talk about in her music. And one of my biggest issues with this record is I do feel like, especially in terms of lyrics, she really compromises. Instead of talking about stuff that really needs to be spotlighted, I feel like she kind of takes the easy road on a few tracks and lyrically doesn't deliver to the level that she has done in the past. Which is a little bit of shame. I mean, again, she probably felt like if she wanted this to be her last record, again, I'll say that in air quotes, she wanted to leave on a lighter note, and I understand that. This album was originally going to be titled Matadata, which would follow up in the Matangi storyline, referencing the Hindu goddess, and the Matadata was going to be like this, the texts that she reveals, kind of like in a Mahabharata kind of way. And of course, that never came to fruition. However, the first track we heard from this record was released way back summer of 2015, and it was called Swords. And it was recorded and filmed, its music video, in India using the sound of swords, very ceremonial, to create the percussion. And it definitely has a distinct Eastern Indian flair to it in the instrumental, and also in the sampling of traditional Indian vocalizations performed by Indian artists. So it's also a, great tribute to her homeland and culture, which is something that, again, I kind of wanted to see more of in this record. If anything, it feels like in a lot of the music that she does, it gets a little bit further and further away from her roots. This album has collaborations from Black Star, Diplo, Skrillex, a bunch of others, Dexta Daps, a Jamaican rapper, Charles Smith is a frequent writer that she works with. Palau de Dawn. Richard X is a producer listed. There are a ton of collaborators on this record, including even ex-One Direction member Zayn, although they never met in person. He features vocals on her song Freedom. So this definitely feels a little bit like an anthology of all the past collaborators she's worked with. She's worked with Diplo, of course, a lot before. However, they had a bit of a falling out, and then they kind of rectified that by deciding to work together on one song on this record, which is a remix of the song Birdsong, which is originally produced by Black Star, and I think the Diplo version is a lot more exciting and more fun to listen to. So let's dive right into this. Let's talk about the first track, Borders. This is one of the quickest songs she has ever recorded. She said it came about in like 2 hours. It was a really quick song for her to write. And the overlying kind of production is very repetitive in this track, and it definitely feels like a song that had so much potential. At first I was really interested and intrigued by it, and of course the sound is very distinct, very good East meets West kind of flavor. And of course, the song is talking about the refugee crisis, probably the most explicitly by talking about borders. What's up with that? All of these artificial borders that we create to keep people out of certain places. And the music video that she released was extremely well choreographed and beautifully filmed, showing people in, jumpsuits, basically on fences, like protesting basically this statement of people being trapped on one side of a fence and another, and the hierarchy that forms of class and social justice. Now, Borders is a song that I think lyrically suffers to a minor extent because I can sense maybe why this song was so quickly created. The lyrics are asking to dive into the subject more, with all of these questions. But it's a little frustrating how I feel like it's more kind of just like an assemblage of an idea rather than exploring it and really trying to craft a point that really gets you to scratch your head or really gets you to ponder something. I feel like she's just ruminating on the subject of borders and trying to come up with witty metaphors, but it ultimately kind of just feels like a hashtag fest, just trending topics that are vaguely political in nature. Freedom, idem, medum, where's your weedum? This world needs a brand new redum. Weedum the key, weedum the keydom to life. Let's beat them. Weedum smartphones, don't be dumb. Borders, what's up with that? Politics, what's up with that? Police shots, what's up with that? Identities, what's up with that? Your privilege, broke people, boat people, the realness, the new worlds. I'm gonna keep up on all that. Guns blow doors to the system. Yeah, F them when we say we're not with them. We're solid and we don't need to kick them. This is north, south, east, and western. We representing peeps, they don't play us on the FM. We talking in our sleep, they still listen on a system. We sitting on a stoop where we get our scoop. This is how we keep it cool. This is how we do. She later goes off in verse 3 talking about egos, values, histories, my boys, my girls, your power. It's an interesting call and response type song where she is challenging the system. She's challenging the supremacist, patriarchal, capitalist. All of these ideals are being challenged. And the only thing is I do feel like it's a bit too soft. It's not pulling enough punches for me. And again, the song does start to refrain a little too much, and I feel like it gets a little bit bloated in length. And the length wouldn't normally be a problem if there was a little bit more bite to this track. But eventually it kind of just does start to feel like it repeats itself over and over again and gets just a little too mellow for my taste in her delivery. She doesn't have such of a rambunctious growl to her voice in this album. She's kind of delivering it in almost this more kind of flat nasal way, which is characteristic of her vocals and rap delivery, which I am a huge fan of. Don't get me wrong. I love her vocals. I love her very kind of witty way of delivering lines that, she keeps her accent that's very Cockney, very London. She keeps that, and the drawl is very kind of strong and prevalent, and I love that about it. But I just feel like she could have added some more emotion into the delivery of these lyrics instead of feeling like she was just kind of like lazily reading them off a page. I did forget to mention, before I dive into any more songs on this record, the title AIM. I think we can all kind of understand where that title comes from. Obviously, it's the moniker M.I.A. backwards. And also, the idea of AIM is something she was actually toying with naming Matangi, her previous record, because apparently Matangi, or Matangi, as she pronounces it Matangi, in her London accent, apparently AIM is one of the mantras of Matangi, the goddess. And so the idea of, it sort of was perfect coincidence for her to want to use that acronym and reverse it as the idea of aiming forward for something. And again, it's a bit vague, just like the rest of this album. Aim for what? Well, we can guess where she's going there, and people who know her and are familiar with her, it's pretty obvious. But like I said, maybe this title doesn't feel quite as personal because her previous records were named after members of her family or her given name or referencing a specific Hindu goddess. This title feels a little bit like, oh, of course I'm going to name it this because it's like a fun, easy thing to name an album, but it's very vague. And this album feels kind of vague in structure, and it's not the most cohesive of her records either. It's a little bit all over the place. Next track is Go Off. This was the second big official single released for this record. This is a much more biting track. She definitely picks up the angst in this one, and I prefer that. She really picks up the speed on this track. It has a very similar East meets West instrumental and production, but just a little bit more memorable, I feel. I'm gonna talk and you gonna listen. I'm on 10 like men, even better than them. Yeah, I don't lose focus like a German called Sven. My third eye's open and my focus ain't joking. Yeah, you got it wrong because my focus is so strong. This song is pretty much anthemically kind of summarizing how she does not want to be silenced, and how she doesn't want her words to be misconstrued in the media. People love positions, so I stay way up on a level. You know, she is not losing focus on her mission. Her manifesto is still ringing clear. And even though I say that this album feels a little bit murkier, a little bit more vague, on songs like this, you can definitely tell where her direction and focus is headed. You know, highlighting injustice, you know, feminist ideas of like not staying silent when suffering abuse, all of these things that, you know, she is going to go off on them, supposedly, you know, the major mainstream media or the status quo governments. You know, she will never be silenced. And this song explodes much like the minefields that she uses in the music video, which is basically just a bunch of explosions and minefields. This song actually is very explosive. It feels like dynamite in the way it kind of is propulsive and the way it kind of weaves in and out. I love the bridge, that breakdown, muffled vocal, because it has that punk feel that I feel like was missing on some of the other songs on this record. So Birdsong, Black Star remix, is one of two songs called Birdsong on this record. The other is a deluxe version. The deluxe version is much better. Not that Birdsong lyrically is uninteresting. It features a kazoo sounding instrument that, some sort of unique instrumental for sure. It can get a little grating. It's not for everyone. M.I.A. is a, you know, love it or hate it type artist, and this is definitely a song that people are going to either be really interested in or intrigued by, or are going to just, you know, at face value, like, turn this off. What the heck is this? It's a much more monotone version to the more dancier Diplo version. Basically, all of the lyrics are these very, very clever, witty puns alerting to bird species, which I think is very clever and very interesting, and it's the kind of thing I expect on an M.I.A. record, where she takes the subject and playfully, in almost a childlike way, construes it to create some very clever metaphors and similes to paint this picture. And you might ask, well, why is she choosing birds as a subject? Well, we don't need to necessarily know specifically why. Birds are very elegant creatures, and I think that the usage of some animal as a symbol to paint a picture of a world in chaos is not unusual. And I think that creates a natural meets or organic meets synthetic world very beautifully. I'm a parrot, I'm robbing this joint. Not a liar bird, sure ain't a vulture. Don't swallow that, 'cause I make the culture. Staying rich like an ostrich. What's so rich about an ostrich besides the fact that it has the word rich in it? I mean, some of it doesn't make as much sense, but it's clever wordplay. Love ain't an albatross hanging round your neck. Drink a sparrow, love is food, take a peck. Let's go to Turkey, swift like a rail. A rail is a type of bird. Can't pigeonhole, I'm epic like a Zeus tale. Free up my love. Doves cry, are you going home alone? Squad flock migrate for the summer. Duck out for some hot weather. Birds of prey, and I'm shaking off my feather. See the waterfowl swing on a creeper, like starlin dictating love on my speaker. Hot flamingo, go bird emoji yo. Monogamous like a swan, going with the flow. So, really clever poetry here, referencing tons and tons of different unique bird species. Does it all really make that much sense in the end? Well, there's very, very interesting snippets of sense in, I think, the lyrics. And then some of it kind of just disintegrates into being just more about the birds and trying to create puns rather than necessarily forming a cohesive message that all of the lines coming together kind of create. There's beautiful snippets of meaning, but I feel like as a whole, the song kind of loses a little bit of that meaning. I mean, she sings "Free Up My Love." This has a very kind of expressionist kind of undertone to it, so I can see it as being a expression of freedom, and I feel that in some of these tracks, a yearning for freedom. I feel that in most of M.I.A.'s music. So I, if anything, would say that's the underlying theme. But the Diplo version just has all of the extra electronic guitar influenced dance grooves that you would want from a song like this, which makes the lyrics even more biting, even more clever, I almost feel like. And it definitely just gives it that energy. It's night and day in comparison. I mean, this version feels quite stale in comparison to the Diplo version. Jump In is a Black Stars track that just feels like a little bit of a waste. It's very modified vocal, kind of her singing of zip up my jacket, put my phone in my pocket, keep my mind open, I'm trying not to lock it. I make a plan, put it in God's hand, and jump into that van. Jump in, jump in, jump in. Wake up, your life on take up, go thank that maker, get your life on fleek and take off. Basically, I mean, just get to going to what you're doing. Get to work. Take that leap of faith. But sonic wise, this song is it feels like a producer just messing around with vocal distortion. It's not a melodic track, and it's also not necessarily a song where her rap ability is showcased very much. Let's talk about Freedom featuring Zayn. I really wish this song had an official music video. This is one of those big single-worthy tracks that I think is quite a highlight. She actually had talked about writing it quite a while ago, possibly even in the Matangi era, but always thought it was too positive or too lighthearted or pop, too pop for her. So she finally decided to release it for this record. I love the line of referencing the People's Republic of Swagistan. Some people, yeah, I don't know. It sounds a little generic in terms of her style being just a lot more sort of, a lot more hip hop. And this song actually feels kind of very kind of standard pop music. But there's something in the loop that I find very alluring. And I do, again, the East Meets West, it's really hard to say that, aesthetic is I think really pleasing. I think that Zayn features some beautiful vocals that are hearkening more to his roots as Pakistani, and I think that that is something that really comes across beautifully. I don't need any audition. I just got my own little mission. It grew bigger than a politician. Yeah, history is just a competition. Do you want to sign my petition? It's for the people with dedication. Some people F it up, take vacations. Refugees learn about patience. All the stars are still shining, but you're the only one I see. I can feel when your heart beats. Baby, you can't keep your eyes off me. So we've got a generic pop hook, and we've got M.I.A. rapping in the verses, trying to make it vaguely more political, but it's still not like a good mesh. I feel as though in terms of lyrics, it just feels like these one-off phrases, hinting at her more political undercurrents, but not really diving into any of it. And that's just, again, a prevalent issue I have with this album. But sonically, I actually find it, in its generic kind of construction, actually quite beautiful and melodic, which is not something I normally would say for an M.I.A. song. Foreign Friend featuring Dexta Daps. This is a song that, again, I feel like it refrains a little too much and maybe does lose a little bit of that spark because of it. This song definitely, I think, though, is lyrically one of the few songs where I think she's really honing in on the idea of immigrants in another country. And I think that's the most kind of, she really gets her teeth into that subject. Talking about, you're going to be my foreign friend, I'm going to treat you like my best friend. I love the line, break bad, watch Breaking Bad. Always there when I break up bad. In bed feeling so sad, you are always there as a comrade. Says life a box of chocolates, we say who packed it, do you feel me? Very true. Where we come from, we get out our tent, then we climb over the fence. We don't want to cause an offense. Then we get a Benz, a flat screen TV, and we pay rent. The traditional story of buying into capitalism to become assimilated into this Western culture. Then we think we made it. Then we become your foreign friend. Again, I do feel like she could, instead of just dropping these sort of very political bombs in there, I really wish she would explore it a little bit more. But she's making some very good points about assimilation and how becoming a foreign friend can be, a novelty and something that Western people kind of think is exciting. But these people on the other side are actually just trying to make a life for themselves. Just trying to survive, and often East meets West kind of juxtaposition of ideals and coming from nothing to try and have a lot of money can be very confusing for someone trying to cross that border. And I think that's what she's getting at. Finally, this is an example of a song that just, it has a tropical dance hall beat, and it feels like something that, would definitely, it definitely feels more like a demo, like something that's just quite unfinished. There's another song on this record called Survivor. I'm basically going to just talk about these two songs together. They just don't do much for me. They're the two weakest tracks on this record for me, just because I understand she wants to feel lighter, but being lighter doesn't necessarily have to mean that the sound becomes so much more generic. Especially in the case of Survivor, which is one of my least favorite songs on this record, which is a shame because it closes out the standard edition and is supposed to feel like a culmination of sound. Just feels so lacking of emotion. It really feels like she's just clocking in and basically just delivering in a very flat tone, which I get is her style, but she doesn't feel liberated when she's singing these lyrics, and that's my biggest issue. So Finally and Survivor both have that similar kind of, especially in the case of Finally, like interesting production that almost makes it want to build up to be something more. And there are a few, times where her voice is layered to sound like a chorus. And Finally, and I think that kind of helps add some sonic depth to the atmosphere of the track, but ultimately it does just kind of fall flat a little bit for me. One of my favorite tracks on this record is A.M.P, All My People, or A.M.P. This is a tour de force, intense dance track. And that's something that I love that she does on all of her records. It reminds me of Steppin' Up from M.I.A. It reminds me of tons of tracks off of Matangi, including the title track. It just has this amazing dance break. And the energy is just so infectious for this track. Lyrically, it's very kind of universalist, like all my people come together, make noise. Don't bring your gun there. Don't bother me. You can't take me. You want me, pay me. You can't two-pack me. You can't biggie me. I've got a bikini with a bikini in Bekwai. Bekwai is an island. She references that in Matangi. I talked about that in my Matangi review. This song was actually meant to appear on Matangi, which is partly why it does sonically sound much more of that era with the horns and the distinct Indian flair in the instrumental. It was originally called Saturday, and it features Thavil drums. I'll keep on coming back like your freaking acne. I am proactive, brand new perspective, back on a Mac tip with matching red lipstick. See, this is those classic witty lyrics that I love that are just a roller coaster. Baby got back, I got front. You got a stack, I got a trunk. I'm on a 7, I'm on an 11. The difference is kind of like Devon and Yemen. I love that line. Devon in the UK and Yemen. When I go Oman, I say, yeah, man. I open up a club and fill it strictly full of woman. My mama go to church. She says, amen. She also says, why are men teaming up with demon? So some really strong jabs at mainstream religion, which I think is really, really clever. I love all men. They all take me heaven. I can't keep myself in check like a Mormon. Like, wow, this is fun. This is good lyricism. And this is one of the few times where, like, I'm just in awe at M.I.A.'s flow and at her, because her flow is impeccable on this track, and at her wittiness, because it's just on point. Definitely a highlight track. Ali, Are You Okay is another track that I really enjoy. This one is speaking about sweatshop labor and being overworked, needing a vacation. I haven't even seen you since you left Calais, a refugee camp. Ali, are you doing okay? Tell him you're not going to be working late. It's been ages since you spent the day. Don't ignore your doctor's orders. All work and no play. I think we need a holiday. So a traditional sort of, my husband's working so much, we don't get any time together anymore. The system is breaking our love. And there's something very rhythmic, and there's a sampling of some sort of Southeast Asian vocal, and it's very traditional sounding. So it actually feels, it reminds me of like puppet shows. I don't know why, but there's something so rhythmic and percussive about this song. It's very tribal sounding. And it definitely sounds very Southeast Asian. I love when there are these distinct world pockets in her music where she really uses that ethnographic kind of lens to view an issue or a song, and the sonics represent it so well. And this is one of those tracks. Who produced it? Black Star and Richard X. So you definitely have this manic kind of repetitive beat that just drives the energy, and this is what kind of thing I wish the album had more of. Visa, very interesting title. It samples one of her highlight songs, Galang, from her first record. It was originally going to sample Circle of Life by Elton John, but there was a lot of copyright issues involved with that, so she ended up having to sample her own song. And this song is all about the southern border with Mexico and people trying to escape. And it's clever. I mean, it's got an African sounding beat to it, and again, a song that definitely pulls all the jabs. But I feel as though there's a minimalism to it that maybe could have been amplified. Again, coming off of A.M.P and Ollie, Are You Okay? There's just something a little bit underwhelming about it. But at the same time, I do think this song stands on its own 2 feet. And I do think I like how it kind of encapsulates one theme and sticks to it, which is immigrants crossing the border, instead of trying to jab at everything. It's more classic M.I.A. in that regard, and I enjoy it. It feels like something that would have definitely fit on her M.I.A. record in terms of sonics and also theme and subject matter. And also Fly Pirate. This is another song. I'm not really sure how I feel about it. The idea of a pirate is multifold. She is referencing, obviously, pirates in general, but this French soccer team. So in the music video for Borders, M.I.A. wears a shirt that says Fly Pirates, but it's using the logo and kind of a typeface of this French soccer team called Fly Emirates, and they ended up suing her because of that. And so basically that was, again, an instance of her being blackballed and her turning that into fuel to kind of use that as symbolism for her being suppressed by corporate media. Flip all that. I don't need the clicks and the chicks. So Fly Pirate is a bit more experimental in sound. It's very electro glitch in sound. And it's not a highlight by any means, but I can see where she was kind of drawing inspiration, this sort of revolt against, Rage Against the Machine, revolt against this system, but using a very electronic way to do that. And using the idea of a pirate being someone who is kind of raiding things that don't belong to them, but were they ever really belonging to those people to begin with? Sort of becoming this navigator of tricky and murky waters. Okay, so going into the deluxe edition, this review is already getting really long, so I'm just going to quickly mention New International Sound Part 2 featuring Generation is a great track. It has a very militant battle cry kind of aesthetic to it, and I think that the video that she used that sampled it, it had like these Chinese martial art fighters at this military school, and their synchronicity, which was like it's super like watching a well-oiled machine. Like, it's very satisfying to kind of watch. And it fits that, the idea of this new generation of fighters, and the way everyone kind of is working together as this unit. And the New International Sound feels like some sort of call to action. Swords, I already talked about, love that track. Talk it's a really fun, like, electro pop song. It has a nice rhythm to it, and of course, it's just about like how you can't shut me up, basically. I talk and talk until I piss them off, and I just keep talking. And then Platforms, the last track, has wonderful, exquisite production. It's actually quite a haunting track, I think. It has this lasting impression. And I think, although it's a little bit vague in terms of meaning, I think she's using the idea of a platform to be something that, a place where people can, it means two things. A place where someone like her can be on his pedestal and create music that people will consume. So she has an obligation to send a message that she needs to send. But it also can mean a train platform and somewhere where people get on and off trains, which can be very symbolic for the tumultuous world that we live in right now. Neon lights on the dust, on the ground, on the bus. Dirty roads make that scarf rap a must. Rolling by, scrolling for the future on the app. Data mine my mind like a diamond in the rough. A platform, here's a train of thought. Getting to the right side of me is why I fought. I'm gonna say what I really got. Maybe there's glory in all the things I'm not. Guns keep it fun, keeping men keeping on the run. So this kind of summarization of why she says what she says, and asking that question of guns keep it fun, keeping men on the run. What is this world, especially in a third world perspective, without war? Can we why is this? This is a prevalent theme in so much of her music, is there's so much more violence in third world countries. Why is that? Are first world countries partly to blame for keeping the third world countries in this state of violence and disorganized chaos so that they can't come together and rival the first world nations, the imperial colonialist nations of the past that in the past really kind of did rape and pillage these poorer countries and keep them in this place where they're weaker and they're more susceptible to violence. And then, of course, tying that into capitalism, the men taking all the money. Tech dudes are the only ones having a good day, and talking is cheap because they make it easy. It's easy to talk, but it's so easy for you to actually change anything. The people in power will give you a bit of an olive branch, but they won't give you like the full autonomy to really fight for what you want to fight for and like create change. A platform, here's a train of thought. So again, using the idea of, from her platform, from her place, being able to discuss these ideas and sort of pose these questions, because she is challenging so many things in her music, and she's always asking the dirty, kind of difficult questions. I also forgot to mention in Survivor, I do like how she uses GOD, the acronym, to mean gold, oil, and dollar. Basically the truest statement ever. So, pointing out the good, the bad, and the ugly in this world that we live in, which is so chaotic, so global now, and using that lens of globalism to kind of unearth and undermine systems of power and oppression that are keeping certain areas from rising to equal status of others. Because there is a lot of dirty kind of power play going on in this global world that we live in, unfortunately. And it's great that we live in a global society, but that comes with capitalism doing its dirty deeds. And I think that M.I.A. comes across brazen and unapologetic in a righteous way that I think we need more artists to speak up and be like, and especially in the era of Trump. But I'm not going to turn this into a political thing because I don't have the time to do that, and I don't want to cause that kind of chaos in the comments. So anyway, so that is AIM. It leaves me wanting more ultimately as a record. Like I said, there's only a few moments where the album really, really feels like this anthemic, cathartic, fun thing that's really fun to dance to. I feel like the Bird Song, Diplo version, and All My People, and maybe Ali, Are You Okay, are some of the highlight tracks, along with Platforms and Swords. And then there just are a lot of tracks that are just sort of like, they're okay, but they just feel unfinished, or they feel like they're too mellow, and it's not fitting for her. And not to pigeonhole her, but like, as she says, you can't pigeonhole her, but I think a lot of critics were sort of sensing that. So it's a little bit underwhelming in certain aspects, but certainly an interesting album. Her music is always interesting, and it's always refreshing to hear because it's so different from mainstream stuff. And I definitely recommend it. But it's not my favorite record of hers. But it definitely has some highlight songs, like I mentioned. So I hope you enjoyed this review. Thanks so much for watching. Check out, I'll link in the description, my reviews of all her other albums. That'll all be in the description. And I'm really looking forward to seeing this documentary that she's finally going to release in the US at the end of this month. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. I love you so much. Please give it a like and subscribe if you did. Peace, love, and light. Bye.